This episode is sponsored by Well Balanced Nutrition and 360 Health.
Welcome to the Health Geeks Book Club podcast. Listen in as Kristen Norton and Eleanor Russell review all those great health and wellness books you've been wanting to read or you have read and want to talk about. Here's Kristen and Eleanor.
Well, hey, Kristen, let's talk about the food fix today.
I'm on board.
All right. Well, this is a book by Mark Hyman, MD, and the opening quote here is so good. He says, he doesn't say, he says that Wendell Berry said, people are fed by the food industry, which pays no attention to health, and are healed by the health industry, which pays no attention to food. And I think that's a really interesting statement. Mark Hyman is an MD, and he has some interesting credentials. He is head of strategy and innovation for the Cleveland Clinic Center for Functional Medicine, and he's the board president for the Institute of Functional Medicine and founder and director of the Ultra Wellness Center, and he's written several best-selling books. And this book has got some interesting sections, and we're tackling them sort of one at a time, looking at them.
So we're going to dive right into these food fixes and just tell you about them and talk about them in general. So we're talking about what Mark Hyman is upset about and how he recommends we change things.
Yeah, and so he's really taken on big pharma, big ag, and big food. And if you're not familiar with who those folks are, we'll probably be telling you more about that as we keep talking. But one of the ideas that he puts forward is it would be really helpful to the public if we could transform our food labels, because he suggests that, interestingly enough, maybe companies have put labels on our products with really teeny tiny types so that you really can't read them, and maybe the information on them is not that informative after all, and most of us don't know how to make sense of it. And he said that chili has taken the lead in this. And he said big food finally met its match in chili. More than half of all 6-year-olds and 3/4 of adults in Chile are overweight and obese. Sounds a little bit like America. And the country's healthcare system spends roughly $8 million every year on obesity-related conditions. And he also talks about how the big food targets kids and gets them to buy things or beg for them or throw tantrums, and these little screen games they're playing, like Pac-Man or whatever, they have like a Burger King ad in the middle of it. And I was not aware of this, and I asked some young moms, those games those kids are playing, do they embed images of the fast food companies in there? And they said, oh, yeah. I didn't know this.
Yeah.
A 3-year-old, and while they're on screen, I don't know, according to other things we've read, that's not a good plan, but I know a lot of us do.
But yeah, since our first conversation on this, I've paid attention, and fast food ads haven't really shown up for the things that my kids do, thankfully. But I mean, the food industry definitely knows how to capture their attention, putting a cartoon character on something, putting it at their eye level, making it look fun.
Yeah, and people say advertising doesn't make a difference.
Oh,
well, then
yeah,
why are these
right.
companies spending so much money on it? You know, I mean, when you think about it, would they invest in it if it didn't work? I don't think so.
And a perfect example of what you were saying is that, you know, it's not easy to read a label or the front of a package. It can be confusing. Whole wheat bread, for example. You might think that you're going out to choose a nice,
healthy
hearty, 100% whole wheat bread. But you pick up something that says honey wheat bread, and you think you're doing great until your friendly dietitian.
Would that be Kristen Norton at
Well Balanced Nutrition, little shameless plug there, reminds you to look at the ingredient list and look how there's really no more fiber in that than your white bread. And it's not whole wheat. It's just they put in a little bit of wheat flour in with the white flour so that they could trick you into thinking you're making a healthier choice. So that's a perfect example of how it's not easy.
Oh, but it's even more nefarious, if that's a word. When you're looking at the list of ingredients, we assume the first one is the major one, right? Well, what they're saying is maybe we should have food companies revise these labels and put a percentage of how much of those. So is it 95% flour, or is it 10% flour, 9%, 9%? I mean, you just don't know the proportions. So anyway, what I was going to say, Chile was leading the way, and they actually passed a sweeping new law, and it's in Spanish, which I don't speak, which roughly translates to the Food Labeling and Advertising Law. And while there are challenges in its approach, the overall effort is laudable. And here's some of the changes that law made in Chile. Food companies must display big black warning logos in the shape of a stop sign on processed foods that are high in sugar, salt, saturated fat, and calories.
Or calories.
Would that be easy to see?
Yeah, it reminds me of when cigarettes had to start having labels like, these could kill you. And now the food is in Chile labeled that way.
Whether it's ice cream, potato chips, salad dressing, yogurt, Nutella, they get 4 warning logos on their labels. However, this unduly focuses on ingredients such as calories, fat, salt, and sugar, which are easy for processed food companies to manipulate. Remember the low-fat Snackwell cookies?
All too well.
Rather than on an overall diet, quality, and protective foods. It's a step in the right direction, but this is a type of oversimplification that, well-intended, may in fact lead to other unintended problems, as we saw with the low-fat revolution that resulted in our current obesity status.
I agree 100%. I think that it can be manipulated. It's an oversimplification, and it also gets into the realm of labeling foods as good and bad, and there's a whole nother consequence of that. Leading to a very unhealthy relationship with food. So the second thing they do in Chile is strict new limitations instituted on food advertisements, especially those aimed at the children.
Younger than 14.
Mm-hmm. So Tony the Tiger was removed from Frosted Flakes. Oh my gosh. No. I can't imagine. Toucan Sam was pulled from boxes of Fruit Loops. Yeah, I mean, those things gone, and they're no longer as fun as...
But what's funny about this is we love Tony the Tiger.
I know.
We love the little toucan, I mean, what is wrong with us?
It's a childhood memory.
What is wrong with us?
I don't know. We've gotten swept away by the food advertising.
Well, we like them so much we want to pick that box up and take it home. And then we open it up and eat it. If
it's an icon.
Well, I know, but if you took the food out of that and looked at it, do you think, I don't think I want that?
Right.
But the box is pretty. And I spent money on it, and a lot of money on it, so you kids are going to eat it. And, because it's full of sugar. Bad. There are restrictions on the sale and marketing of junk food to children. No longer can ice cream, potato chips, or chocolate chip cookies be sold in schools or advertised during cartoons. Oh, yeah, cartoons, or on websites that target kids. In fact, junk food commercials are no longer allowed on television or radio between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m.
Can they do that with toys, too? Just saying.
Well, they used to do that with violence and nudity and all that kind of stuff, but now it runs all day long. So, even if you initiate these things, who's not going to say the reruns 5 years from now are not going to be back there?
Yeah, I think this is great. I mean, can you imagine a world here where these triggery things weren't all around for our children and ourselves?
Absolutely. And when we go back to the blue zones, there were communities that had no TV. And they said, if you have to have, one of the recommendations of blue zones was, if you're going to have a TV, have one. Not one in every room.
Well, I'm failing there.
Well, I am too.
Not that we have one in every room, but we definitely have more than one.
Yeah, but there's just one of me, so hey.
So lastly, food companies must incorporate messages that promote physical activity and healthy eating in the advertisements for some of their products. Now, I feel like this is what he also says is an issue with like Coke, where they tried to cover up the fact that soda could be contributing to obesity by just saying, no, we just need to exercise more.
Exactly. And they were talking about the big food companies that emphasize the importance of exercise and moderation, but they were still selling you a bad product.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the image of me running down the street with a Gatorade that's full of all sorts of food colorings and extra sugars that I might not need might not really be what I should be drinking.
No, well, and it was like Coke. Or, and it's like the beer. Now they're selling light beer, but in the commercial, they're all like really athletic. They're like, finish your sports with your light beer.
Yeah, exactly.
Just doesn't go together.
Well, what they're saying, the effect of this law, though, is influencing kids to have an influence on their parents. Like, Mom, don't buy that.
Yeah, that's neat, isn't it?
What do we...
Well, you have to change the generation, and it's probably the youth that is going to make the difference. And if they're saying, no, don't buy that, I don't know. Speaking of Gatorade, I was talking to my daughter the other day because we went to my parents' house and my dad loves Gatorade, always has it. And so he gave them one, and she's such a moderator that she, days later, still has some of this Gatorade that she's just sipping on a little bit at a time. And I told her, this is a special thing. We're not going to do it all the time. And she asked me why, and I went into the food coloring and whatever, just trying to make it as kid-friendly as possible. And she goes, well, why do we let that happen, Mom? Who do we have to protest? What do we have to do? And I'm like, wow, look, you're going to change the world. So maybe it is a nice thing that this policy change that they had in Chile was causing the children to be like, well, hey, why is this like it if it's not good for us?
Well, and then what will be interesting to see is if they can get their obesity under control.
It will be interesting.
And that's what Mark Hyman is saying. If we can reduce, obesity leads to so many chronic diseases because of the inflammatory processes underlying that if we can get that under control, we might actually bring down some of these health costs. And what I would say is a quality of life for the people that are suffering from the damage that's produced by the eating. He gets into obesity and chronic disease, since we brought that up, and is talking about the way we feed our children in our schools, and talks about the SNAP program. Do you know anything about the SNAP program? Because he says that we need to prioritize nutrition and put the N back in SNAP.
Yeah, he has a lot to say about SNAP and how unhappy he is that it's basically free money to use on whatever you want. And they're often using it on soda and things that are unhealthy, and that the advertising is directed towards them at the time of the month that you get your SNAP benefits. All of these junk foods go on sale and are put out the front of the store because big food knows and advertisers know. And I think it's good that he's calling this to our attention. And so my connection with SNAP is that for nearly 10 years, no, it was more like 8 years, that I worked for women, infant, and children. And if you qualify for SNAP, then you qualify for the WIC program, which is for pregnant women and children up to age 5. And with WIC, it is a nutrition education program and specific food vouchers that you can get designated foods. So milk, peanut butter, bread, fruits and vegetables.
Can you buy a $4 bottle of kombucha or a $10 salad on that?
No, you can't. Oh. And so Mark was calling out that, these other programs like WIC have these nutrition guidelines. Why don't we have that for SNAP? That's a good point.
Well, to get a little political, he suggests that we don't have those things because we have some interesting bedfellows with the policy makers. And that he says that if lawmakers were required to wear the logos of their corporate sponsors, they would look like a NASCAR driver with Coca-Cola, giving you $42,000 in direct financial donations. Maybe the National Confectioners Association. That has something to do with sugar, I bet. The biggest trade and lobbying group for the candy industry, and one of these lawmakers took $105,000 from these folks, and the Blue Dog PAC, which is funded by food industry giants like Coke, Pepsi, American Beverage Association, Dunkin' Brands, Grocery Manufacturers Association, and it just goes on. It gets uncomfortable when I read it because I think he could be slanderous or libelous, but evidently he can print this and people are not suing him for that, so it must be accurate that people are being funded in these governmental positions because they know they're going to vote on policies that will affect whether or not these companies and associations can move their stuff to market.
Yeah, and in that same section, he pointed out that someone who was taking all of this money stood up and said, no, I don't think we need to have nutrition regulations for SNAP because that's taking away their freedom and they should be able to buy whatever they want.
Which comes to the conversation about governmental control or individual choice. And there was a conversation about New York City not too long ago with Bloomberg, who put the tax on the big soda drinks, right?
Mm-hmm.
And boy, did that get a conversation all over the country.
Yeah.
Because they were selling, 32 ounces in a cup for $1.19 or something. But it had how many tablespoons of sugar and how many other additives and artificial things in it that can't be good for dental health, much less the fat cells in your body, because you cannot use that many calories when you don't do anything except sit, which is what we've been talking about. A lot of us are not intentionally or unintentionally active.
Yeah. So this whole concept is the nanny state.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. This was hard to read, a little bit uncomfortable, and it's hard to talk about too because it's very political. And I can see both sides of these stories.
Yeah, and I think that's why reading this book is probably a good thing for us to do. Get a group of people together and read it together, and see what it provokes in you. Does it make you mad? Does it make you feel like you don't want to read anymore, or do you feel like, I'm glad somebody told me I need to pay attention because I'm being manipulated, maybe?
Exactly. And at very minimum, just kind of pay attention to the advertisements out there. I think that would be the first step, is to just be aware of the influences that are around you with your food choices. And then, he has lots of great resources to go deeper and to support ballot initiatives and to reach out to your local governments and much bigger than that.
Yeah, it encourages us to follow the money.
Follow the money.
Follow the money and see where it's going and see if you can connect the dots. And maybe we can get some protection if we do that. Did you want to say anything else about taxing junk foods? I mean, do you think we should tax junk food at a higher rate?
I don't know. I don't know the answer. I'm still wishy-washy in that area.
Do you think education can save us from having to do something like that?
I would hope so. And that's why, I would promote nutrition education that's more prevalent in schools and in every grade first. If I could say, instead of having to tax the junk food or make something good or bad or more expensive, I would just like to educate and get it maybe out of schools. I don't know.
Yeah, because like you said, having the choice to have a treat now and then, I don't think any of us want to take that away from anybody.
Exactly.
Because I don't think there is good or bad food. And the issue is when it becomes excessive and we lose control of our choices, or we don't have a choice. That's the only thing available. And I think that's where it gets to be, maybe in some of these programs where we're trying to encourage people not to be hungry, we're not really providing them with options for good choices. They're food deserts where they live, or they don't have enough money to they can't go to Whole Foods and use that money to buy maybe organic products.
Yeah.
Which would be the healthiest. Okay, you want to take a stop from this, or shall we continue?
Yeah, let's wrap this up and we can continue in another episode.
I think that's a good idea. I'm Eleanor Russell with 360 Health, and you can reach me at 360health4u.com.
And I'm Kristen Norton with Well Balanced Nutrition. Thanks so much for listening.
Views and opinions stated in this podcast are solely those of the contributors and are not necessarily those of our distributors or hosting company. This podcast is copyrighted, and no part can be reproduced without the expressed written consent of Kristen and Eleanor.